Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by editor of thewolfpacker.com and fellow co-host Matt Carter, and we're going to break down NC State's Week 7 matchup going up to Syracuse, New York in the Carrier Dome to take on the 18th ranked Syracuse Orange. NC State ranked 15th in the country, so another top 20 matchup for the Pack. Florida State fell out of the rankings before that game last week, right, Matt?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So Florida State was teetering on a top 25 matchup, lost to Wake Forest before last week's matchup. So almost a 3-week span here of NC State playing top 25 teams. Florida State, tough draw on their schedule. I mean, still a solid opponent. So tough stretch of the schedule here for the Pack. Let's see if they can finish it out strong before a bye week and then a Thursday night game against Virginia Tech the week after that. But before we get into this matchup on Syracuse, and we'll start off with a little upon further review of Florida State, if there's anything else to talk about, Matt. But before we do that, just some reminders for the listeners and viewers at home. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you're listening to us. If you're not listening to us in podcast form, if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Play. Even if you don't listen in podcast version, it helps us out. Likewise, if you listen in podcast version and you don't ever go to YouTube, still go over to our YouTube channel and do us a big favor. Subscribe to our channel, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment while you're at it. You can follow us on social media at The Wolfpacker on Twitter. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will. Head over to thewolfpacker.com and take advantage of a special deal. For just $10, you can get premium subscription to thewolfpacker.com as part of the On3 network through the beginning of next football season. So that takes you through August 2023, better part of a year. So you sign on now for just $10. You get premium subscription through the rest of the football season, through basketball season, men's and women's, baseball season, recruiting off season, summer, all that good stuff. So sign up for that deal, just $10. Take advantage of it while you can. Last but not least, thank you to our sponsor of the pod, rogueshop.com. It's rogueshop.com. Head over there now for your CBD and Delta 8 needs. These products are really great. If any of you out there deal with stress and anxiety, pain, inflammation, have trouble sleeping, these products are really great. CBD and Delta 8 cannabis-derived products. You can get edible gummies, you can get cartridges, you can get lotions, you can get all different types of stuff. And if you head over to their website, rogueshop.com, and you're unfamiliar with the product line, or maybe you need some help, figuring out what products best suit your needs, they have a great chat feature on their website. Again, that's rogueshop.com, ROGUE shop.com, and you can chat with them. A small business, husband and wife. The husband is a disabled veteran, so go support the family-run business and support them, because they support us and they help us continue doing what we're doing here at thewolfpacker.com. So again, that's rogueshop.com. Head over there now and go buy some CBD and Delta 8 goods for your health and wellness. Okay, Matt, let's transition back to football here. I've liked to start these preview podcasts with a little upon further review of the game prior, because we typically record our podcast either the same day or the next morning of these football games. And particularly this Sunday, I don't know what it was. Maybe I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I was tired through that podcast. And, have had some more time to reflect on NC State's 2-point win over Florida State. I think, obviously, the biggest thing from that game is that Devin Leary went down with an injury in that game, never returned. It's a shoulder injury, and the x-rays that night were negative, all good there. So he went in for an MRI over the weekend, and based on Dave Doran's report this Monday, it's kind of questionable day-to-day, week-by-week type situation. According to Dorn, from what I read, Matt, it said Dorn said that he could be back as soon as this week. He could be back in 5 weeks. So it's really just a matter of, I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't seem like he was very descriptive, and that's probably purposeful. But Matt, what am I missing anything with this Leary injury? It seems kind of like what maybe we thought on the post game reflections pod.
Yeah, I think the good news is not worst case scenario. He is probably going to be back this year, so it's not season ending. At least it's not expected to be season ending. Assuming it responds well, he responds well to rehab. There's no surgery is required. So you got the best case, and it's just a matter of how quickly can he regain the range of motion and arm strength. I presume comfortably and not experience any kind of pain or limitation in that. So I would say best case scenario, but also to your point, I wrote about this in our News and Views. You gotta remember where Syracuse is coming into this game. October 1st they played Wagner, and we're going to talk quite a bit about Syracuse's schedule in a second here. But they played Wagner on October 1st. They had a bye on October 8th. They have every advantage that mankind could invent for this football game in terms of a lead-up from a scheduling standpoint. And Dino Babers said on his press availability Monday, it almost felt like they went back to the drawing board with the Devin Leary injury, and that kind of took away some of the bye week advantages they have. So anything that can mitigate that advantage, I think is, Dave Dorn's obviously going to play it up. So they probably knew right away what the quarterback situation was this weekend, but there's no reason to let, any time that Syracuse spends preparing for both Devin Leary and Jack Chambers is less time they're spending preparing for the actual quarterback in the game. And they're two different quarterbacks, so that's exactly what Dave Dorn wants, and it kind of mitigates a little bit of that bye week. So that's why you saw him being vague, and probably will continue to be that way until we reach a point where Devin Leary is coming back.
Well, just a little gamesmanship and nothing.
Nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with it. Nothing new coming from that. I mean that seems to be kind of how Dave Dorn operates, how this program has operated, during his time here, and he's not alone. I would say most other Power 5 programs would act similarly in terms of just not showing your cards to the opponent, but other than the Leary injury, and I think it's all generally good news. I mean, to me, my biggest question is, can Leary return for that Wake Forest game in November 5th? You got Syracuse coming up this Saturday, then you've got a bye week, then you've got Virginia Tech on a Thursday night, and of NC State's remaining ACC games, probably could make an argument that that's the easiest one left, or at least the most winnable. A Thursday night game in Carter Finley Stadium against arguably the worst team in the Coastal. Virginia's probably the worst team in the Coastal. Boston College might make a stake at that claim for easiest game left on the schedule. But where I'm going with that is then you have another 10-day rest before the biggest game left on the schedule, which is home game against Wake Forest, November 5th. Leary went out October 8th in the Florida State game. So that would put it just under a month of a return timetable. And why that's such a concern, anybody that watches around the league of the ACC knows that Wake Forest is probably the best offense in the ACC. If it's not Wake Forest, then it's UNC, which is also a team remaining on the schedule at the end of the season. And look, NC State's defense has been great, but the offense has continued to struggle, and that's something about, upon further review, one of the takeaways from the Florida State game is that NC State's offense continued to struggle. NC State's defense really lifted it to that win, and great special teams play lifted it to that 2-point win. But, it's going to be tough to compete with high-power offenses like Wake Forest and like UNC, who even against a good defense are probably going to be able to put up 30 points on the board. Can you keep up with them? Can you trade paint with them on offense? And it's hard to imagine NC State's going to be able to do that without Devin Leary. But I think we're going to learn about what NC State's offense could look like with Jack Chambers this Saturday on against Syracuse. Obviously, we don't know for sure if Devin Leary's not going to play. I think it's safe to assume from an NC State perspective that he probably won't. But yeah, anything else to add to that, Matt?
No, I think you kind of. Yeah, I will say when I went back and watched the game, I thought the offense did do a nice job in the second half running the football. They did pretty much everything, but when they got into the red zone, punching it in for a touchdown. But they ended the second half, I think, with about 170 yards of total offense, which, if you had done that first half, you're talking about a 350, 400-yard day at the office. But I thought they wore down Florida State pretty effectively in the second half, more so than I appreciated seeing it live. Time of possession was big in the second half. Field position was huge in the second half. So I feel like NC State kind of caught some breaks with the field position. Did a real good job kind of going with the run, which I think, if I recall, Justin, you and I talked about this was a game to potentially run the football with Florida State last week.
Yep.
And we saw that in the second half. And then the defense was just lights out in the second half. Florida State dropped a couple of passes. I thought one in particular that they probably wish they had back. But and I'm sure Jordan Travis wishes he didn't throw either of those interceptions. They were poor decisions. Snap decisions. That's kind of hard to, slam a kid at a heat of the moment, split-second decision, but they were the wrong ones. They were the wrong calls. But you also got to give NC State defense credit. Both times they had the right defense for that play and got the interception. I think Mike Norvell said on Monday, NC State called the perfect defense for the first interception that Travis threw. So that's kind of my takeaways. I agree with you, though. We're going to learn a lot about both these teams. I feel like we say that every week, but we're going to learn a lot about, I think, in particular, Syracuse this weekend. This is a very interesting Syracuse team that, we were talking pre-podcast. Kind of hard with their schedule to really kind of say anything definitively about Syracuse. On one hand, they have beaten 3 Power 5 teams. I'm not saying it's been Cupcake City. 5-0 and 2-0 in the ACC, but when you dig a little deeper, you realize,
But I wouldn't call their schedule hard thus far. Great segue into the matchup here. Let's start to break it down. Like we said, this is a top 20 matchup. I don't know if it's going to look like a game of a top 20 matchup on Saturday. Number 15, NC State going up to number 18, Syracuse. Syracuse has an 18 next to its name because it's 5-0. It's done what it's had to do, and it's beaten everybody on its schedule thus far. But, other than the week 1 win at home against Louisville, 31-7, that was a surprise. Syracuse was a underdog in that game. I think a lot of people were bullish on Louisville going into this season with Malik Cunningham, Scott Satterfield kind of on the hot seat going into this season, still remains so, with Louisville kind of stumbling out of the gate. Syracuse looked really strong in that game, won at 31-7. Then the rest of the way, you've kind of seen the Syracuse team that maybe you thought you were going to see, I guess with a kind of a positive, glass full perspective maybe. Took care of UConn on the road, 48-14, to be expected. Then they had the home game against Purdue, which has probably been their best opponent thus far, other than maybe Louisville. Matt, you mentioned that Purdue lost its quarterback to injury.
They're still 4-2, and they won at Minnesota at Maryland the last 2 weeks. So
and those are 2 good wins. I mean, look, the Big Ten West is kind of that conference's version of the Coastal and the ACC, but those were the 2 perceived better teams in the Big Ten West that they just beat. I actually watched that entire game, Syracuse-Purdue. Had Syracuse in that game, so was happy with the final result. But that game, Syracuse, credit to Syracuse for winning that game. Okay, that first and foremost. But Purdue really handed Syracuse that game on a silver platter. Purdue scored a late touchdown in that game and then committed two unsportsmanlike penalties
On the extra point, right?
Right. To scoot them back on the kickoff to, I think it was the 10-yard line. So Syracuse had a great return, had great field position, and then I think they got another pass interference, or another unsportsmanlike penalty, something stupid, that led to Syracuse scoring the game-winning touchdown with 7 seconds remaining. That game was also the epitome of a drunk game. That game was 10-9 going into the fourth quarter. There was not a single touchdown scored in the first half. It was 9-3 Purdue at halftime, and that game was 10-9 Syracuse going into the fourth quarter. There was 42 points combined scored in the fourth quarter. Syracuse having the edge 22-20. I don't expect this game on Saturday to turn into that, trading paint. And by the way, Syracuse went on to beat Virginia the next week by 2 points. Kind of a sketchy result because Virginia, probably the worst team in the ACC, fair to say.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's competition, but they seem like by far the worst, considering Louisville just beat them by 3 touchdowns without Malik Cunningham last week. And then, of course, Syracuse took care of Wagner, FCS opponent, 59-0, bye week, and now they have NC State. So we just went through Syracuse's resume pretty thoroughly there, and yeah, it leads exactly to what Matt's saying. We're going to learn a lot about this team because this is really the first ranked opponent of the season for Syracuse, and first team that you know confidently kind of what you're getting with NC State. There's still some things to be learned about NC State, but I don't know, Matt. I feel like I've got a kind of a good grip on who NC State is. I think we're going to learn more about Syracuse. I think NC State's a team that's got a top 15 defense, no question about it. Well-coached team, well-rounded team, great special teams, which is always a plus and can make a difference in these 50-50 games. But you look at the rest of NC State's schedule, they got 6 games left. To me, Virginia Tech and Boston College are the only ones where I'm saying take NC State and forget about it. Don't worry about those. There's 4 games left that I can see NC State winning all 4 of them, but I could also see NC State losing any 4 of these games. That starting this week with Syracuse, then Wake Forest, Louisville, and UNC to end the season. So,
I think you're right on about Syracuse in terms of. I remember they were losing to Virginia. They had a 16-0 lead at halftime on Virginia and lost it all. And was losing 20-19 until they kicked a field goal with 1:14 left to go in the game. Until Virginia had a chance late in the game. They were at their 47-yard line on a 4th and 4. They had 3rd and 4 at their own 47 with about 30 seconds left to try to get in field goal range. Probably needed another 20 yards or so, and couldn't. They overthrew. I want to say on one play, you overthrew an open receiver. But that, like you said, that's not a good Virginia team. They are currently 2-4. Since the Syracuse game, they lost by 21 to Duke and 17 to Louisville. The latter at home.
Without Louisville's starting quarterback.
Yep, without Louisville's starting quarterback. They also lost by 3 touchdowns at Illinois. So that's kind of the only Power 5 game that Virginia has been competitive against. And you mentioned the Purdue game. If I recall, they had to kick off from like the 10-yard line or something like that.
That's right. No, that's what I'm saying. Purdue.
Yeah, after they went up, they had to kick off from like their own 10-yard line, if I recalled, and gave Syracuse field position at like the 50.
So exactly right. That's how Syracuse won the game-winning touchdown. But then Purdue committed 2 more unsportsmanlike penalties on Syracuse's extra point. So then Syracuse could just boot it out of the end zone.
Right.
on the kick. They were kicking from, I think, the 30 from the Purdue 35 on the kickoff.
Yeah, and I think their last touchdown drive was aided by a couple of pass interference penalties, which I think is what drew some of the unsportsmanlike under the unsportsmanlike penalties. But yeah, you look at the numbers from that Purdue game, and you kind of wonder how Syracuse won. I mean, Purdue had 485 yards of total offense. Syracuse had 306 yards of total offense. Syracuse had a pick six. Obviously, that played huge in the game. But you'll look at how Syracuse has progressed this year, and you're looking to try to say, okay, where can NC State? Let's operate under a worst-case scenario, all right, Justin? No Devin Leary. Very plausible scenario as well, right? So let's say he's not playing. Syracuse has a legit defense. Purdue is the only team that really got them defensively, and that was really just in the fourth quarter. For 3 quarters, Syracuse was able to handle Purdue's offense. And then Purdue kind of exploded in the fourth quarter. Syracuse is number 1 in the ACC in total yards per game allowed. Now, part of that is Connecticut, part of that is Wagner. I think Wagner had like 60 yards of offense. But you look, they held Louisville to over 100 yards below their average. They held Connecticut to 83 yards below their average. They held Virginia to almost 70 yards below their average. So, and you look at NC State, they average 370 yards per game. That's entirely inflated by games against Connecticut and Charleston Southern. Against Power 5 teams, they barely had 300 yards against Florida State, under 300 yards in the other 2. So you're not seeing a path for NC State to realistically score a lot of points in this game against Syracuse defense. So how can they win this game? Let's look at Syracuse offense. You mentioned the Louisville game. They have a new offensive coordinator at Syracuse, Robert Anai. Came from Virginia. Obviously had a lot of success last year at Virginia. New look offense. Plausible to say that they got Louisville. They caught Louisville by surprise. Louisville was blind, didn't know what to expect. Syracuse came out, threw some stuff at them that they weren't anticipating, and it worked, and they got 449 yards of total offense in that game. Against Purdue, they had 306 yards of offense. Purdue's a solid defense, ranked number 28 in the country in total yards per game given up. Against Virginia, they had 352 yards of total offense and scored 20 points. Virginia's 70th in the country in total defense and yards per game allowed. So if you're looking for where this path to victory is, you're thinking, might it be the offense that teams have started to figure out Robert and I's offense at Syracuse, and they've started to get the book on the personnel in that offense, that you're seeing a little bit of a natural regression, so to speak, to what more like we thought Syracuse would be offensively. We know they got a great running back, Sean Tucker. Big question with the passing game. They could not throw the football at all last year. They've had better luck throwing it this year, but as you've seen, that production has slipped. They scored 20 points against Virginia. Remember, they had a pick six against Purdue, so they really scored 25 points on offense against Purdue. 7 of that was aided by a tremendously short field position and some penalties in that end of that last drive. So I think that's where we're going to learn about Syracuse. If the new look offense, had the book been figured out, and can NC State defense that played so well against Florida State second half, can they show up and hold Syracuse and put this into that low-scoring, competitive game that I think NC State kind of needs to pull this one out?
So I think you're telling me to take cover, get the pots and pans out, protect yourself, because this is going to be a rock fight on Saturday.
If NC State has its way. Now, let me say this, too. Let's say Jack Chambers starts. That might be an advantage for NC State. Because, yeah, you saw him in the second half, but that was, that's on the fly.
They didn't show anything. He didn't show anything in the second half.
You know that he's capable of running. That's what Syracuse figured out. That the guys
Yes.
can run.
You got to respect the run.
Yeah. But I'm guessing if it is Jack Chambers, that's a whole new game plan for Syracuse. And you could potentially have an element of surprise early in that game where you might be able to catch Syracuse early with some surprises.
Thayer Thomas trick play?
Even they probably aren't expecting Jack Chambers to throw the ball eight times on the first drive. Could you catch him loading the box and get him over the top or something like that?
I think they are expecting the Thayer Thomas pass, by the way.
Yeah.
I think any trick plays coming in the next couple of weeks probably expected. But Vegas sees this game similarly, playing out similarly. Syracuse is a 3.5-point favorite. A lot of that due to the unknown status of Devin Leary. I think that has Devin Leary missing the game baked into it. I would say that
I think that was about a 7-point swing because originally Vegas was going to have State a 4-point favorite.
That's correct. More than a touchdown swing. 7.5.
Yeah.
So quite a big move there, but also over/under set at 43. Now I think part of that line movement, Matt, might just be watching NC State last week. I think NC State lost some confidence in terms of the national perspective, despite winning by 2. You already knew that NC State was a team that could pull out close victories. I think the question this year was, could NC State take that next step and be more on the same tier as Clemson rather than be on the tier that it has been, which is that second tier, the ACC, Wake Forest and whoever the competitive other squads are in any given season, competing for second place against Clemson. It seems that we've clearly established that Clemson is the best team in the ACC. Was NC State going to take that next step and really start winning some of these 50-50 games by wider, more comfortable margins than it necessarily has been? It's going to be tough as long as the offense keeps performing as it has been, particularly when Devin Leary's not part of the equation. But giving Syracuse 3.5 points at home might be, I don't know, it seems like kind of an overreaction because I think NC State's defense is going to impose its will no matter what, regardless of the game. It's going to keep NC State in every game moving forward. Even without Devin Leary, NC State's going to have a chance with that defense. But 3.5 points and the over/under at 43, very interesting to me. I thought it might dip even lower just because these teams' strengths and weaknesses match up pretty similarly. Syracuse had early success on offense. They've had success against inferior opponents on offense, but it doesn't exactly strike me as a team that's going to finish in the top half of the league in offensive yards per game when it's all said and done. And NC State, of course, we know has strong defense and special teams, but the offense has really struggled thus far. I mean, you look at Syracuse winning that Virginia game at home, 22-20. NC State Syracuse screams more of a rock fight to me than that game. I don't know. I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be tough for both of these teams to get to 20 points.
You got to remember too, Purdue, Syracuse was a rock. You mentioned it. That game got drunk in the fourth quarter, but for 3 quarters, that game was a rock fight. I think it was 10-9 going into the fourth quarter. So
exactly.
I actually think that if NC State had gotten into a rhythm and some confidence and established a passing attack and Devin Leary was healthy, you'd feel really good about this game for NC State. You really would. But the fact is they have not gotten into a rhythm offensively. Syracuse is a unique defense. They are an old defense. And by the way, they got legitimate players. I mean, their linebacker, Michael Jones, or Mikel Jones, however you pronounce his first name, I apologize to him, but he's a legit All-American guy. The corner, Garrett Williams, is a legit All-American caliber corner. They got guys on defense, and they run a similar 3-3 stack, not the same type as NC State. I think NC State prefers more power in the 3-3-5 versus Syracuse more speed and athleticism in it. But it's legit, and so if you're Syracuse, you kind of like this matchup better than perhaps you saw it at the beginning of the year. But on the flip side of that, if you're NC State, you're like, if there's a game we have to play against a really good team like Syracuse, without our quarterback, Syracuse might be that game because you could get it into that, like we talked about that. I mean, you're tempted to take the under. Over under on that scenario.
I mentioned it earlier, Matt. I see 4 games left on the schedule. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me, but I see 4 games left on the schedule that NC State could lose. If all goes not in the Wolfpack's favor. Also could win these games in Syracuse, Wake Forest, Louisville, North Carolina. Do you agree with that? They could win or lose all 4 of those games?
I mean, realistically, they would probably need Devin Leary back for Wake for me to buy into that. Because I don't think defensively you can hold a good day in the office defensively against Wake Forest. Is probably holding them to 28 to 32 points. That's a lot. I mean, we hadn't seen NC State's offense with Devin Leary be able to put that up.
Yeah.
So I think realistically you probably need Devin Leary back by then. And we talk, that'll be 4 weeks from the game in which he hurt his shoulder. So would the next 3 weeks be enough time for him to get through a practice that week? I mean, for all we know, he might be practicing this week, and I'm wasting a lot of hot air talking about Jack Chambers. But
it'd be an okay problem to have.
Yeah, it's okay. One last X factor: the Dome. Let's not forget. That place could be rocking. They sold 45,000 tickets. It's expected to be their biggest home crowd since number 1 Clemson came to town in 2019. And the Dome itself, I've had multiple people tell me it's loud as you know what in that Dome, regardless of crowd size, just because it's closed in.
Yeah,
it's an extremely loud environment. So. They're going to be amped up, excited to go. So you're going to take a hard punch from Syracuse right off the opening kick out of the locker room. So you better be prepared to play, locked in, focused. Yeah, the same problem you had at Clemson where everybody was going off the ball movement instead of cadence. It's probably going to apply here against a good defense. So you got to be ready for that. No false starts, and you got to. But all of that has to be minimized in a game like this. So, kind of an X factor.
Good point. Things have gotten weird the last couple times State's gone up to the Carrier Dome. The most recent trip was in 2020.
The JMA Wireless Dome now.
Carrier Dome.
This time.
Carrier Dome, and I don't know what the new name of Heinz Field is, but it's Heinz Field for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, I don't know, man.
What is it? Still RBC Center for you in Raleigh, or
no PNC? What RBC PNC Arena wasn't like. If something is what it is for that long, like a venue's name, and it's not a problematic name, it's not like the Washington football franchise changing its name to the Commanders. That's different. There's a reason for that. It's Heinz Field. It's the Carrier Dome. It's if UNC gets a sponsor for their basketball arena, we're not gonna. It's still the Dean Smith Center. End of soapbox. Yes, it's going to be a factor. NC State last time they went up to the Carrier Dome, it was a weird game because Syracuse I think hadn't won an ACC game yet that year, and NC State was pretty good going into that one, and that ended up being a 4-quarter showdown.
Every game that Dave Doran has played in the Carrier, now you got me doing it, in Syracuse has been a 4-quarter game. Every single one of them. So he's 3-1, but none of them were comfortable either way. And you're right. So Syracuse actually jumped out to they had a 29-20 lead late in the third quarter in that game. Led 22-14 at halftime, was leading 29-20. That was the game where I think Bailey Hockman had that terrible safety.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or he scored a touchdown, but then he fumbled in the end zone, and the ball
I think he did both.
went out of.
And
yeah.
And Syracuse had a cook-off return for a touchdown. But NC State came back, ended up winning 36-29 when the Syracuse Syracuse was driving and he forgot it was fourth down.
That's right.
And spiked the football with the whatever time was left.
Weird game. Game. I kind of expect another weird game this week. Here's my tip. If you took my tip last week, you would have cashed, by the way, because NC State did not cover the spread, but they did cover the tease. Actually, I gave out a tease for the Clemson game. NC State was, I said tease NC State up so that you get them plus 12.5, and then take the over, which was already a low over, would have brought the over to like 37. So it was 30-20. NC State covered their side, and the over easily hit in that game. So you would have cashed if you took my teaser for the Clemson game. I would say take the same approach to this game. Tease this game out, because I like NC State plus 3.5, and I like the under at 43. But I like it a whole lot more when you tease it up, and NC State is now a 9.5 point underdog, and the over-under would go up to 40. If I like the under 49, so score fewer than 7 touchdowns, and NC State lose by less than 10 points, and it hits. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't see NC State losing by more than 10 in this game, and I don't see it going over 49. So that's why I like the pick. Last thing, if you got a second, Matt, before we tune off here, I've seen some frustration about NC State falling in the rankings below Wake Forest after last week. Wake Forest beating Florida State, NC State beating Florida State, but NC State falling in the rankings after that. I don't have much of a problem with it, though. What do you think?
Well, it was just the AP poll. They both, in the coaching poll, State moved up to 13, Wake to 14. And the AP poll, Wake and NC State split places. But you know the difference between the two teams in the AP poll? 2 points. 2 points, right? So basically they were tied. And so the reason why I don't necessarily have a problem with it, although I kind of think, Wake moved up for beating an Army at home or whatever, and NC State beat the Florida State team that when I checked on game day that morning, most of the people were picking Florida State to win that game on ESPN game day. So
they're also picking Florida State against Wake, but
but it was kind of a toss-up. Army's 1-4 this year, and you flipped them because Wake destroyed Army, who was 1-4, and NC State came back from down 2 touchdowns to a team that was ranked previously and who a lot of people were picking to beat NC State. So I get where it does seem kind of a disrespectful move a little bit. I get that. I will counter with this for those who are upset. If NC State wins Saturday at Syracuse, Wake Forest has a bye week. NC State is probably leaping Wake Forest right back in the AP poll and jumping right past them. And I feel like, too, if NC State wins, you bring up something I've been thinking about. Let's say if NC State wins, big if they do win, there's some potential movement up potential in this week's AP poll, because you have Wake has a bye. Number 13 TCU is playing number 8 Oklahoma State. Yeah,
somebody's got to lose.
Somebody loses, they're probably dropping 4 spots minimum. So if it's TCU, you're definitely moving past them. But you also got number 10 Penn State playing at number 5 Michigan. So let's say Penn State loses. So let's say if you beat Syracuse, you're probably jumping right back over Wake Forest. There's only a 2 point difference in the poll. You would jump over Penn State, who would fall from 10. Probably fall 4 or 5 spots. So now you're up.
Is that game in the Big House, or is that Penn State?
It's at Ann Arbor.
Oh, not a guarantee.
But
Not a guarantee.
let's say TCU loses at home to Oklahoma State, so now you're jumping past them. So you're up to 13. I would say Penn State's going to fall at least 3 spots, unless they lose by like a last-second field goal or something like that. But if they lose, if they don't cover the spread and the Wolverines are favored by a touchdown, it's potential that NC State could get all the way up to like a 12th in the polls.
Yeah. No, I mean, if NC State keeps winning, they'll be right back in the top 10 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
No question.
So,
and it's all going to work itself out because NC State's going to play Wake Forest in a few weeks. So
that's true.
So there's no reason to get angry. If they want to use it as locker room motivation, play the disrespect card, put a chip on your shoulder, cool with that. Because if that yields better results, then I'm all in favor of that. But I don't have a problem with it because resumes are one part of the rankings. I also think you should watch the games. I think that's an important factor. And if we're being honest, NC State and Wake Forest have had 2 common opponents over the past few weeks, and Wake Forest has looked better against both of those teams than NC State had. So
look, we do a power rankings every week, and we have Wake Forest ahead of NC State, and I don't think anyone at this point could have a reasonable disagreement with that. So it's credit to Wake Forest, but I don't think there's a large gap either.
No, and they got to come to Carter Finley, and that's a big one. That's a really big one. But it's going to make it bigger if NC State takes care of business this Saturday against Syracuse, and we see them continue to climb up the rankings. So tune in. What was it? It's going to be a 12:30 game for me, so it's going to be 3:30 on the East Coast. ACC Network should be hopping in the Carrier Dome. Tune in, watch the Wolfpack take on Syracuse, or maybe you're going to the game. Anything else to add, Matt, before I close this out here?
Real quick. It's the JMA Wireless Dome at Syracuse.
JMA.
The JMA Wireless Dome.
JMA Wireless. Is that a cell phone company or?
I don't know, but they actually, I saw they just approved this week a big JMA sign over the dome. So it's the JMA Dome.
I'm not gonna call it that, but I know you have to ride it. So, are you going up? Anybody going up?
We're gonna save the travel money for another day. So nothing cheap about going up to Syracuse.
You're saving it for the Orange Bowl.
Nothing cheap about going to Miami either, but I'd be happy to spend that money.
That's the hope, right? That's the hope. Keep winning.
So.
All right, we're gonna wrap up this podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're already listening to a podcast, subscribe there. Apple, Spotify, Google Play, we're there. Plus, you can always watch us on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel while you're at it. Give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment while you're at it. You can follow us on social media. At The Wolfpacker is our main account. On Twitter, you can follow me personally at Justin H. Will on Twitter. Give us a like on Facebook, NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. And head over to thewolfpacker.com. Sign up for a special deal going on right now. For just $10, you can unlock premium access to thewolfpacker.com and all of the great content as part of the On3 network. For just $10, it'll get you through the beginning of next football season. So it takes you all the way through this football season, all the way through basketball season, baseball, summer, recruiting camps, all that good stuff. You're going to be getting a ton of value for that $10. Also unlocks your access to the message board so you can talk with fellow NC State fans and get the inside scoops before they even become stories on the site. So take advantage of that deal. $10 gets you through the beginning of next football season. That's the end of August 2023. So better part of the year there for just $10. Last but not least, thank you to our sponsor of the podcast, RogueShop.com. I invite all of you to head over to rogueshop.com. That's ROGUE shop.com for all of your CBD and Delta 8 cannabis needs. You can get cartridges, you can get gummies, you can get lotions, you can get oil tinctures, you can get all kinds of good stuff over at rogueshop.com. Husband and wife outfit, small business. The husband is a disabled veteran, was turned on to these products to help him with some of his chronic pain, needed help falling asleep, stress, anxiety. He wasn't a guy that was into all this for most of his life. And when he's turned on to CBD and the natural remedies there, just really changed his life. So that's why he started this company to help spread the wellness and benefits of CBD and Delta 8 to everybody else, so that you can enjoy those benefits too. So head over to rogueshop.com. They've got a great chat feature there on the website to help you pick out everything that you need based on your needs. So support them. They support us. So thank you to rogueshop.com. Head over there now. And that's going to do it for this Wolfpacker podcast. For Matt Carter, I'm Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.